Now let me show you how to save yourself some time and I hope reduce the human error factor by doing your reloading on a progressive machine. From the prior videos, you now know the 8 basic reloading steps. You'll find that a progressive machine will accomplish each of those steps with a single handle pull. Remember, I told you my recommendation to use a progressive press rather than begin with a single station press goes against conventional wisdom. But use your own judgment after watching the next video, considering the steps you'll save, the time you'll save, and maybe most importantly, the very real increase in safety. Let's start along our reloading path by making good, safe pistol bullets, which are generally simpler to reload than rifle cartridges, a subject that I'll cover in later videos. Instead of having to insert each die into our press, then adjust that die, use it, remove it, replace it with the next die, adjust that die, and so on and so on, all of the dies on a progressive machine are held on a single plate. So you make one adjustment one time for each die. Call this plate the die holder. The die holder itself slides into this large casting of the reloading machine. Oh, by the way, that plate has gotten pretty busy really quickly, hasn't it? But don't worry, we'll go through the function of each and every one of those tools as we move through the video. If we now cycle the handle down and then back up, the machine will push a cartridge into the shell plate. With the cartridge in station 1, pulling the handle down again moves the shell plate up, squeezing the cartridge case into the die, and at the top, pushing out that old primer. Then moving the handle back up pulls the cartridge back out of the die and at the same time rotates it to the next station. We are Americans, and we Americans are litigious, aren't we? Continuing to watch this video is your contract with me that you understand and accept the risks, death included, and that you hold me in no way responsible for any mistakes that you might make. This is a serious and critically important contract, and if it's not okay for you, please turn off the video, do something else. For those of you still with me after that somewhat scary disclaimer. For our third step, we will have to insert the terminus deceit as a new primer. Notice that as we bring the handle back up, this small ram elevates into the central portion of the shell plate. If there were a primer sitting on this ram, the primer would be pressed into the case's primer pocket. As we move the handle up and down, the reloader will bring new primers into position. Seating the primer is done in the last few inches of travel of the upward stroke of the handle and must be done very, very carefully. Think back to that picture of that protruding anvil. You might consider that we are doing more than simply seating the primer. We are sensitizing it, pushing that anvil against the explosive compound. When the primer is correctly seated, it rests just the slightest amount below the cartridge base, and you can feel that it is in deep enough easily with your finger, easier than trying to measure its depth. For steps 4 and 5, it is this tool that interests us. This polished steel will ever so slightly flare the mouth of the cartridge case, so it will accept the new bullet. As the ram moves the shell plate up, the cartridge gets pushed into this flaring tool. Moving up further, the cartridge pushes on an activating rod that drops powder into the cartridge case. Fortunately for us reloaders, these two steps are accomplished at this single station with a single downward pull of the handle. At this point, we have a sized, reprimed, slightly flared cartridge case containing the correct amount of powder in it. At least we hope we do, and we need to be absolutely certain. So step 6 is critical because mistakes happen. We must check that powder has in fact dropped into this case and that we have the correct amount. You can buy a small mirror that allows you to peer into the cartridge case, but I find it so easy to get distracted and forget to look. I strongly recommend this powder checker. It fits into station 3 of the die holder. When you move the handle down, a brass tipped rod enters the cartridge case and is pushed up by the powder. If the correct amount of powder is present in the case, a trigger fits into this groove. Too little powder, the rod doesn't elevate enough and the buzzer warns you. A double charge will also warn you because the rod is pushed up too high. And that completes step 6, a most important safety check. Failing to drop powder into the cartridge case will give you an extremely dangerous condition called a squib load. There is enough force of the exploding primer that force will usually push the bullet into the barrel of the gun. The next round may chamber, and then when it fires, since the barrel is obstructed, you will almost certainly blow up your gun. For step 7, we'll place a bullet on top of the flared cartridge case mouth. Bringing the operating handle down pushes the bullet to an appropriate depth into the cartridge case, and that pull completes step 7. Now, even though the bullet is at the correct depth, the flare will likely interfere with the cartridge feeding into your chamber, and worse, the bullet may get pushed down deeper into the cartridge case during the feeding, or it may move during the gun's recoil. Removing the flare and crimping the bullet firmly in place is our next and final step. Our next cycle of the handle removes that flare at the cartridge case neck as the cartridge enters the crimping die. Then with the next pull, your finished cartridge rotates off the plate and falls into your bin. This sounds complex, doesn't it? Even a bit tedious, but you know, it's really not. Let's put these steps all together and watch what the process looks like in real time. When you think about it, it actually takes longer to describe than to do. And now that's almost all there is to your reloading, but the last step is to inspect your finished cartridges, box them for storage, and to write everything down. Friends, it is essential to keep records. Making quality reloads requires, as you have seen, meticulous attention to detail, and you will need to know what those details are in the future. I urge you to write down everything. I guarantee you will, sooner or later, want to do some load experimentation, maybe with other primers, other powders, other bullets, and you will want to know which combination has worked best for you in the past. I use a bound notebook, and you'll notice I label everything. Let me now make a general statement. All, and I mean all, American-made reloading presses are superb. I'm showing you the Dillon 650 because it's the first reloading press I bought some 25 years ago. But they all operate similarly with only minor differences in function. Importantly for all of us, especially for you, none of the manufacturers of the tools, devices, equipment, powder, or anything I've shown you here gives me money or any other compensation to say nice things about them. So, in a nutshell, I have no conflict of interest in showing you, recommending to you any of these tools. You know, one thing you cannot put a number on is the independence from outside interference that reloading your own ammunition will give you. In today's uncertain Second Amendment environment, you may value that independence highly. There is a final, somewhat existential aspect most of us find in reloading. Nobody I know has been able to put a value on the satisfaction we get from producing our own reloads, but you have to factor that in. My friend Peter observes that when he's reloading, the cares and troubles of the day go away, his mind becomes quiet, at peace. In today's overly busy world, that's something to think about, something to factor in. You now know the basic principles required to load or reload most pistol cartridges. In the next video, we'll look at the all-important cost-to-benefit question. It's about money. If when you make comments or ask questions, you sign your real name, I'll do my best to reply to answer those questions. The comments I'd really like to get are those that tell me how I can improve the video. If I've piqued your interest and you want more technical details, try my next videos making tactical plinking and rifle rounds.